All right, so I had asked, what do some people want me to cover? And someone asked, ways to rise above the noise and confusion, glimpse beyond the illusion and the endless rabbit holes. So to rise above the noise and confusion, the way I do it is I have my own agenda in place. My agenda, I've stated it so many times, I want to talk about ending artificial scarcity, showing the abundance, preaching about abundance, focusing on abundance, getting people to want to talk about releasing all the suppressed technology that would enable people to become independent and ungovernable, and the biotechnology things that could enable us to live much longer. The longer we live, the more intelligent we'll become, as well as the third part with the 3D printer, which is the replicator from Star Trek. Once we can manufacture abundance on demand at all times, that creates the abundance that allows us to then not have to be dependent on a system and then conform to a system. And it just creates an unleashing of absolute freedom. Because there was a book called Beyond Freedom and Dignity by, I think, B.F. Skinner. And in it he said, no matter how free you think you are, you're still bound to the rules of nature and your bodily functions. You still need to breathe. You're still going to get sick. But if there are ways, once we get beyond the cost model, because right now, the way the health system is designed, it's designed for you to get sick. They get paid when you get sick instead of getting paid to keep you healthy. So once we get past that paradigm, then a lot more of the cures and the advancements for your health to improve your health so that you won't get sick will happen, and hopefully ways to prevent death or prolong life. Once those happen, it creates a whole new world. The other agenda, obviously, and I've said this a million times, is to evangelize, telling you that I remember choosing my life in another dimension from a catalog of lives, that I'm here voluntarily, and if I'm here voluntarily, chances are you are too. And then once we understand that we all have voluntary existence, we will probably then take an account of the way we live and ask ourselves, are we living our best lives? Are we getting the best gaming experience that we could possibly have? I have my agenda. I know what I strive for. I know what I try to shape and pivot and craft my message to. And so that's how what you said, rise above the noise and confusion. For me, it's not even about taking in the info. It's me saying, all right, which info that's now being released to the masses to believe, what are they given permission to understand, and how can I take that and craft that to my message? So I engage in the info war. I have an agenda. My agenda is a real beautiful agenda. I'm trying to set everybody free and give everybody abundance and have everybody question reality. So that's my goal. And I would love to learn all the knowledge. I know the knowledge all exists. It's just all locked up. So that's the part of releasing the artificial scarcity and the suppressed technology. Once that's all done, that's my goal. And it's also reflected and echoed in the 9th insight of the Celestine Prophecy. So to answer that, how do you rise above the noise and confusion, is define what your mission is. Once you have your mission, that'll help get rid of all the noise and confusion, because think of it like this. A running back has a play, right? And that running back looks for the holes in the offensive line and then gets through that, makes his maneuvers, because his goal is to score a touchdown. His goal is to run it to the right, run it to the left, or run it through the middle, but follow the blockers and gain yardage. That's what I'm doing all the time. I'm looking for my holes. I'm looking for when are people allowed to believe certain concepts, and then punch it through. So once you have your mission, have a mission, that's the answer. Once you have your mission, everything else falls in place. You wanted a glimpse beyond the illusion and the endless rabbit holes. Well, yeah, that's a point you get to when you realize it's kind of like Mark Sargent said. He got through all the conspiracy theories, except the last one that was there was flat Earth. And the flat Earth is a whole new rabbit hole, because, I went down that rabbit hole. I'm not like stuck on flat Earth. I'm at realm Earth. Realm, it's a realm. We're in a realm. The reason why I use realm is they don't have any arguments against that, right? So it allows, because see, with flat Earth, people are conditioned to reject it, right? They reject flat Earth, so I don't use flat Earth. But realm Earth, it's kind of like, it's kind of fun to think about. The only people that don't like to think about realm Earth are those that are so bought into believing whatever science told them to believe. Anybody that's not married to that enjoys realm Earth. The only ones that don't are the science nut jobs. And that's not to say that science doesn't have value, it does, but there's also value to keeping an open mind. Remember that all 4 economic systems are based on scarcity. So socialism, capitalism, communism, and fascism are all economic systems based on scarcity. So just because capitalism doesn't work for some people, the answer isn't automatically socialism. They're all created by the same group. They're all based on scarcity and allocation of scarce resources. Once you make all the resources abundant, not only that, like the elasticity of demand and goods, there's replacement resources. So once one item kind of goes a little scarce, you could use another element to get the same effect. For instance, we use copper because it's less expensive than gold, but they can both conduct electricity. Do the opposite of the Cloward-Piven strategy. So so instead of overloading the system because of scarcity, let's overload the system with abundance. How do you do that? Well, you unleash the abundance by removing the artificial scarcity. We all believe there's scarcity because everything has been made artificially scarce. Once you reveal the methods and the techniques and the know-how to unleash the abundance, then that's the proper counter to the Cloward-Piven. Instead of overloading the system because of scarcity, let's overload it with abundance to remove the scarcity. Here are some episodes that that maybe someday I'll get to, but not in the near future. One is how to make abundance obvious to all people. An episode on apologetics and how that works, because I still think people don't understand apologetics. Fact checking is part of it, but there's also another angle, and I haven't found the right way to put it into words. But once you understand the concept of apologetics, so much of the deception and the damage control and the public relations makes sense. How I want the world to be. Believe it or not, I've made thousands of videos, and I feel like I'm always beating around the bush, even with this video, instead of just making a video of how specifically and exactly I want the world to be. And I should have started off with that. So I got to make that video at some point. Just stop beating around the bush. Say, do this, do this, do this. This is how you do this. If we do this, engineer this, put this. Give the blueprint of exactly the way I see how the world can be. And I don't know why I haven't done it yet, but I should have done that 10 years ago. How to make a free society. How to make everything free, but yet have society still work. I guess that's kind of part of how I want the world to be, because the monetary system is the replacement enslavement system, and that's the scarcity. That's why you're limited in your experience. All right, the term bad actors is a vague term that you might want to have people specify when they say bad actors. Now, there are in fact some bad actors that do harmful things, but in other cases, when people are called bad actors, it usually means that these people are infringing on our monopoly or duopoly or oligopoly, and we want them out. So bad actors doesn't always mean bad actors. It means people that are trying to compete. Gas permeable lenses. Long story short, there's a kind of contact lens called a gas permeable lens, and it makes vision look like 4K. Like a 4K TV set or this 4K video, which the lighting has gotten kind of low so you don't see it, but if you ever see 4K video, that's what these gas permeable lenses make reality look like. It's incredible. Like if you look at the street, you can see all the sediment and everything in it. Tree bark is amazing, flowers look amazing, the world looks amazing with gas permeable lenses, but you got to have some kind of certain eye situation to get them. They're expensive. If you have eye insurance though, it gets covered. I want to tell the legend of the libertarian. This was in 2002. I graduated in 2001, but like one of my first real jobs where I had leadership was a political job, and it was with the Republican Party, but there was many significant events I experienced on that job, but the most impactful, like prophetic one, was I was at this event and I was kind of small talking with this guy, but this guy seemed a little different. He seemed insightful. And I forgot what he said, how he even got into the subject matter. And again, I didn't really know, I was kind of learning on the fly. I didn't know much about politics. It was an opportunity that I took. And I was talking to the guy, and I found out that his political party wasn't Republican and that he was Libertarian. And I didn't even know there was a third party, other than the Green Party. I had known about the Green Party with Ralph Nader, but I never had heard of a Libertarian Party at that time. I was young, I was like 20. And the political nature of the world wasn't as abundant as it is now. So I was like, wow, libertarians, what's the deal there? And he's like, well, they're kind of like Republicans, but they're Republicans that found out the truth about the party. And I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. That sounds conspiratorial. I like that. And he said, yeah. He's like, I guess you don't get it yet, but there's many different factions to the Republican Party. You got the establishment, which are called the rhinos, and you got the conservatives, and he mentioned all these different groups. He's like, and you got the libertarians. And I said, yeah, so why are you here? And he said, well, because there's not enough libertarians to ever win an election, but the Republican Party is more consistent with our values of liberty and sound economics than the Democrat Party. It's like, okay. He's like, that's why I'm here. Most libertarians, when we don't get our candidate, we eventually, most of the time, just vote Republican if we vote. And most of that you already know. But he got to this point where he said, someday the conservatives will figure out that they're being used by the establishment faction of the party, the rhinos. He's like, but they're so, again, this is 02, he said, they're all so enamored by the suits and the language and the prestige and the polished speaking abilities and the professionalism of the rhinos, as well as their money. So in the end, they always surrender to what the rhinos want them to do. And the rhinos always tell them who to vote for. But he said eventually, someday, when the conservatives figure this out, they will join forces with the libertarians, and we will make America great again. I don't know if he said make America great again, but it's something along those lines. And the moment I point to as that happening was 2013. Fresh off of the Mitt Romney loss to Obama. None of the conservatives wanted to vote for Romney, but they put up with him, and they were going to vote against Obama and vote for Romney. But Romney was completely uninspiring to them, as he was a rhino establishment. And so that loss hurt because Ron Paul was filling stadiums, and the media was completely against Ron Paul, and they put Mitt Romney in there. So they had that bad taste in their mouth. But the Drudge Report, which at the time was like the #1 site for conservatives, started linking to InfoWars. And unsuspecting conservatives started getting exposed to Alex Jones and InfoWars, not knowing what they were looking at. They just took it as InfoWars was another news site. And so that supercharged the minds of the conservatives to get them on the same page with the libertarians. Because if you have been following Alex Jones from the beginning, for the most part, Alex Jones was a libertarian, and then around 2012 he shifted his show over to conservative, but he still has that libertarian roots in him. And so that combination really impacted a lot of people, and 4 years later, that's what enabled a Donald Trump to get elected, because the people's minds were primed by that point. And so that libertarian was right. That day eventually did come, and the MAGA movement started. And actually, the MAGA movement kind of really started in 2008 and 2012 with the Tea Party. The Tea Party originally was started by Ron Paul and then was co-opted by Glenn Beck and Sarah Palin. And it went from being a libertarian movement to a conservative movement. But nonetheless, if you think about it, those two groups, the libertarians and the conservatives, came together through the Tea Party, and the Tea Party then became the MAGA movement. And the MAGA movement is part of the Great Awakening. So whatever you care about the politics or not, the Great Awakening that came out of this, because all of you are truthers, truth became normalized through the Trump administration. So if you think about what you were able to talk about publicly 5-6 years ago in 2015 versus what you're able to talk about now, well, actually, you're silenced more by the mainstream media and by the social media, but society doesn't really shun you as much as they did 6 years ago. Think about how much more people understand about what you understand compared to how many people were asleep back then and how many people are awake now.